I'm gonna do business studies because it's a generic subject, and it's gonna get me in my foot in a few doors, so I have a few options. Like, people don't really know what they're gonna do. People don't really know what they enjoy, etc. So personally, when it came to when it came time for me to pick my university subjects, I ended up doing firstly a lot of research into the different avenues. I ended up sitting in courts because I study law, right, to see what it's like, and I enjoyed what I saw. And because I got a taste of that, and my internal self kind of corresponded with that, it made me want to go out there and get it.
Yeah.
Which then, so when I was going into university, I was solidified, and it made me want to study. It made me want to put my foot down. I didn't just want to just laze around and muck about. I mean, I've done my fair share of that. I'm sure that's what we all have, but it made me want to, actually focus and do something with my time in education.
That sounds amazing. So we can all say that you've kind of found your passion point.
Yeah.
You found your passion point, and that's something that you're just going to pursue now. You're going to keep pressing
correct.
on that.
Yeah.
You keep pressing on it until you get the results that you want from life.
That's right.
So that's great then. So of course we're going to go on to the next part then, which is how do you tell people not to follow the crowd? So of course you didn't follow the crowd. Of course you knew what you wanted from life, and you've been through various different experiences that have allowed you to not follow the crowd. You've had to be someone that's got to be independent and different.
Before you go on with that, like, I want to clarify. I'm not a special person. It's just I guess Adil's brought me here because he feels as though there's certain things I have in check in my life.
We're going to get to that, yeah.
so like when he says like, oh, you don't follow the crowd, like, there'll be things that we all do that essentially
you got your own source,
crowd,
right?
Yeah.
You got your own different source. I believe every person's got their own different source. But with the society we live in, we all kind of want to look the same, and want to dress the same, want to be the same, want to act the same, have the same success goals and the same things. Now, for me, in becoming independent, you've got to know as a person, why am I different? How am I different? And how do I bring value to others?
That's correct.
Because when you're independent, mentally independent yourself, you give a different viewpoint. I was speaking about this on one of our Ways of Positivity shows. When you're mentally independent and you got your own viewpoint, when someone suggests something and you don't agree with it, you'll stand up for yourself.
That's correct.
Or when someone suggests something and it's not something you like, you'll say, I don't like this.
That's correct.
These are all things I think are quite important when it comes to being mentally independent, because you can marry a spouse, right? And I see this so many times. If you have not got the mental maturity, essentially is what we're coming at with mental independence, and she suggests something or says something, as a person, you're going to then just say, okay. And then if it doesn't go right, then afterwards you're going to say, well, I didn't like this.
The yes man. You become that yes person.
But when it comes to the end, you'll just flip it back on them and say, well, I didn't like this.
But at the time,
you didn't say nothing.
Yeah, you didn't say anything about it.
You weren't your own person.
You didn't expand your independence in that.
You needed someone to hold your hand. And that's
Yeah.
something I don't believe. As a society, I think we need many more people to become mentally independent, to give voice their opinion, to be firm with it.
Yeah, that's correct. The one thing I think is definitely needed is for people just to be analytical, be critical of themselves. Because I think too many of us sometimes we get a little too comfy in. And this goes to me too. Me first before
100%
me first before anyone else. Like anything I'm saying right now, Tay, it's me first before I want to share this with anybody else. I need to take this lesson first, and it's the fact that I should be critical of myself. I have to be analytical of and not just of the bad things, right? I have to be analytical of and break down what I do good, what I do well, what I don't do so well. What I'm great at, what I'm quite bad at, and that's how you can differentiate where you're useful and where you're kind of not. And if you know that, in what scenarios you'll be a benefit, in what scenarios you will be an asset or a liability, right? And from there stems your independence, because now you can pick and choose, right, which situations you put yourself in, which situations you find yourself in, and which situations you want to be involved in. Right? So yeah, being critical, analyzing, being analytical is definitely needed. Like, let's talk from the top down. The greatest athletes do it. right? The greatest businessmen and entrepreneurs and you know, these big FTSE 500 company CEOs, they do it because they're analytical, and they don't take it on a personal basis, you know. For example, Lewis Hamilton, he doesn't let it affect him emotionally.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a personal thing. It's just room for improvement. Mm-hmm. It's just to be 1 second faster on that lap time.
Yeah.
You know, to pick up 1/10 of a second in his qualifying lap, so he can start higher up in the race.
Yeah.
It's
a game of inches.
It's marginal. Yeah. It's very marginal. All of this is very marginal. Like, you can either be completely, you know, self-loathing, right? Or you can be self-critical. Yeah. And there's a fine line between it, because self-loathing is hating, right? It's not wanting to be in your shoes, mm-hmm. but being self-critical is realizing, okay, I'm really bad at this, and although I don't want to be this person, it is what I am, and here's what I can do to improve it. But I am also good at this, mm-hmm. and here's what I can do to make myself even better with that. Yeah. Or here's where I can use what I'm good at, right, to be of an asset, to be of a benefit. Mm-hmm. So like we were saying, it's a game of margins, mm-hmm. and it's about, you know, slowly finding yourself through these margins, I guess.
That was a beautiful, well-structured answer. And do you know what? I remember watching this movie when I was probably about 13, 14 years old, and the guy gave a speech and he said, life is a game of inches. Every single day is just about getting 1 inch closer towards that goal. And what you were saying right there kind of resonates, that same message, because the difference between you being a good person and a great person is only a very marginal,
very fine line. Yeah.
Very fine line.
Correct.
And it's like what you've done to make yourself great. For example, look at all these footballers. Like, as a footballer, when I look at them, they're all very much, they do this, they got that one job, they got a right back's got one job, a centre back's got one job, they've all got different jobs, but it's like, how much better,
there's hundreds of them, yeah.
But how much better are they at those little things? For example, Alexander-Arnold can whip in a nice cross, Kieran Trippier can do a nice free kick. I'm not going to talk about any other right backs because I don't see any other right backs out there. But yeah, it's how much better are you at little things?
But it's essentially, just to take away from that point you mentioned about the footballers, right? There's thousands of footballers, right? But we know of maybe 100, 200, 300 mm-hmm. by name, right? We could say, oh yeah, this person, he's played in this cup final and he plays for this club, etc., right? And why is it that we know those players? Okay, yeah, they might be at a big club, they might, you know, have reached the finals in this, that, or the other, but for them to be put in that situation, right? They need to, I personally think, be built off a set of habits.
Yeah.
Right. It was constantly a habit of Cristiano Ronaldo's to be the first one into training mm-hmm. and the last one out. This is before social media. This was 2004-5 in Manchester United. Yeah. This is before the time of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. You know, he wasn't doing it for anybody else. He was doing it for himself. He was self-critical there. Yeah. Right. When he missed the free kick, right, he would batter himself over it, and so he would then spend time taking free kicks.
We're getting onto the subjects again. He would take it into his mental independence and his own accountability. That's to correct. Make sure he was doing it every single day, which is what we got to take on and aspire to overcoming. Even Islamically, they tell us, make sure you are critical and you're checking yourself for your good deeds and your ibadah. How often you're praying Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. How often you're praying a salah, you're praying a salah on time. All these little things, they say, Umar radiallahu anhu used to check himself for every single thing he did. He would write it down in a diary. He was accountable, everything. He'd go back at the end of the day, he'd sit down, he'd say, what could I have improved and what could I have changed?
The Sahaba of the time, they used to ask the, you know, they used to ask Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, am I a munafiq? Mm-hmm. Am I a hypocrite? Yeah. Right? The reason being is because they were so scared of being hypocrites. Yeah. That they would ask the Prophet constantly. And the Prophet would tell them that if you have this genuine and sincere thought of, you know, am I a hypocrite? Have I done something to be a munafiq? Then you cannot be a munafiq. Yeah. So what is that? They're checking themselves.
Always got to check yourself. Okay, so that's when it's going to bring us on to our current segment, which is how do you not follow the crowd? So a few different ideas I've personally got, and you can maybe expand on them, are being the same as everyone else is getting the same results, potentially worse. Trying to copy another person's
style
or theory or way of life is never going to be the same for you as a person.
Never, yeah, of course.
For example, you could try and become David Beckham and try hitting free kicks like him, having the same brand as him.
You'll never get
Or
it.
you could try being like Khabib Nurmagomedov and try fighting like him, but you're never going to be that person because they're their own unique ID. It's like when you're on face, you got your iPhone, right? You try unlocking it with your face, it's going to work. But you try someone else's face, it's not going to work. But they both try the same principle, but it's a different person, different style, different outlook, different features. It's not going to work when you try mimicking and copying another person. And I know when it comes down to copying, etc., you can try for 3-4 years, right, of trying to be like another person. But at the end result, that person's probably going to be another mile ahead of you, another 2 miles ahead of you. You're still trying to get to the first result that they had. And is that the person you want to be? Do you want to live your life, your unique life, your unique perspective and different style, trying to get someone else's result? And their basic result, not even their end result, their basic result. I personally feel like we've all got to try to find that little stamp of our own, right? Can you expand on that for me? And what's your outlook on copying and trying to find your own unique style as well?
Essentially, when it comes to that, for some reason, the Sahaba Umar radiallahu anhu comes to my mind.
Okay.
Right? And the reason he specifically comes to my mind is because no matter what the occasion was, no matter what was happening, no matter what caravan of gold was coming in for the Muslims at the time, right? No matter what expedition they were going on, his pure goal was to be someone who was a warrior, right? In the time of battle. It was to be someone who was as close as he can be to the Prophet ﷺ during his time away and living in Medina. And during his time as a ruler, it was his goal to be a ruler, right? Nothing more, nothing less, right? He stuck to simply just what he wanted, right? And because of him sticking to what he wanted, he never let anybody else waver him from that. When he didn't like Islam, when he didn't, revert to Islam initially, right? He didn't care about what the other people of the Arabs said in the community. He just cared the fact that there was this person, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who had come with this blasphemous religion against his idol gods. That was his issue. But once he heard what the Quran had to say from his sister and his brother-in-law, he realized that, these Arabs, they're wrong. For me, this speaks truth to me. I like it. And if I like it, I don't care about anybody else's opinions. I should stick with what my heart says, what my gut says.
Yeah.
And for some reason, his presence, he just reminds me of having complete independence and control over oneself.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I always look towards Umar radiallahu anhu for anything that is inspiring from an Islamic point of view related to this modern world, because a lot of what he stood for could be used and practiced upon in our modern generation, especially I believe we live in a world full of tests. And so many different tests. For example, we got a test like wealth, we got a test of drink and food, and so many different news broadcasts and movies and music and so much out there.
And just being male and female.
Exactly, so many tests. But with these tests, we can look towards Umar radiallahu anhu. How would he deal with it? He said, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone's listening right now, but Umar radiallahu anhu said, as an individual, if you are easily wavered by even your own desires, by your nafs, you've got to work on yourself and show strength of character, because a person who can succumb to their nafs is not a strong Muslim. You can even go on and say that that Muslim is struggling. But when you can control your nafs and your desires and make sure that you're firm with your own desires, then you are a person of high quality and high caliber. And I think all of us who want to say this, we want to be high caliber people, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you want to take on Umar radiallahu anhu and what he was saying, follow Islam. Follow everything Islam asks you to do. Islamically, we've got answers to everything, right? Now, if you want to talk about, okay, there's certain things I don't want to do, then as a Muslim, you got to look towards yourself and say, am I being correct here? Because I'm sure you can agree with me when you say Islam's all the answers to everything. And Islam's answers to everything will allow you to be an individual specific to themselves.
See, I'm sure we all know that, right? And that's where the challenge is.
And how many of us practice on it?
Yeah.
Correct? But I just want to give in my own 2 pence personally. My own 2 pence will say that if you're a person who has a specific style, a person who's got a specific way of talking, acting, never let anyone else kind of dim your light. See, when you start dimming your own light, it's where you're going to start struggling as a person. But thank you very much for listening to this part of the segment. I think now we're going to go into an ad break. Just going to check very quickly. So you have been listening to the Ways of Positivity show on Radio Ramadan. Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much. So you're listening to Waves of Positivity on Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM. I'm sure we got cut off quite soon there. We weren't looking at the timer. But we were talking about how to be different from the crowd, how to not follow the crowd, and how to give your own unique stamp in life. Now, before we went into the break, I know myself, I was going to give you a couple pieces of advice that I would carry out and to remain different. So the advice I would give to anyone listening right now, don't ever let anyone else kind of change your style. If you've got a pair of trainers you like and so on, people start roasting you about it, teasing you, and you're like, you know what, I think I should go and get the trainers everyone else likes.
I do that to Adil all the time.
Yeah, he does that to me all the time. Just stick with it.
He's got Transformer trainers, man.
The Transformer trainers are nice.
What am I supposed to do? I can't walk around with you like that.
So for me, like, anything that you've got in life that you like and you think is personable to yourself, don't change just for other people. It gives you and makes you a different person, a unique person, and it allows you to find people like-minded to you. For example, when I left college, right, a lot of my friends used to go out all the time. They used to spend a lot of time just chillers, right? Now, for me, I found I was never a chiller. I couldn't just sit around doing nothing, right? I wanted to go experience new things. I wanted to do new things. Now, I found a nice group of lads that are now like me, and for them, especially when it comes to go out and doing things, they're like me. They want to experience different things. They want to travel. They want to hike. They want to row. They want to canoe. They want to go to different gyms. They want to eat different foods. Now, except for the different foods part, because I'm a fussy eater, we go out and do these different things. And I find
my mom gets offended every time.
No. She doesn't get offended. She understands.
She does get offended.
She understands. Don't make me feel bad.
He doesn't eat anything that my mum sends his way.
No. Alhamdulillah, sometimes.
Don't ever invite Adil to your house. You'll
no.
Oh,
come on, I was gonna have like 5 dawaats now, man. But yeah, like be unique to yourself and don't allow others to dim that light in you. Keep being different. Keep being proactive and keep finding out different parts to you. And don't get offended about what people have to say. If you're easily offended, then you're easily going to be able to conform to societal pressures. But if you're unique to yourself and you don't, and you just take it on the chin, I think you'll find yourself finding like-minded people and enjoying those things that you love, especially if you're someone who likes doing different things. So now we're going on to the third segment, and with this third segment, I think you're gonna love this. I want you to get a pen and a paper. I want you to listen in very attentively to what we've got to say, and this is planning out how you can actually become mentally independent if you're someone who's not. And especially with this mental independence, you want to have a structured plan where over different times you're going to reach different goals. And with these different goals, you're going to become slightly better. It allows you to push forward and not just keep delaying and procrastinating your mental independence. So Amani, as my close friend and someone I've known for many years now, I've noticed that through your past experiences, you have become someone who's matured very early. And not only that, not to get you big-headed, I want you to be able to leave the studio afterwards, but it's also someone that can kind of understands who they are, and they don't easily conform to other people's desires and what they want them to do and what they want them to say.
Except my wife.
Except your wife.
Except my wife.
So yes, I'm not going to tell them your age. I'm going to let you tell them that if you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But how did you manage to become mentally independent, become someone mature at a very, very young age, and manage to make leaps and bounds in progress in life compared to other people at your age, I can say. So I'm going to give the microphone to you and let you tell us a bit about that.
So sometimes I think it just comes down to the situation you're in. Sometimes that can't be helped. Life may deal you a bad hand, and you just got to make the best out of it. You got to try and make your best play with the hand that you have. So in that sense, I would say I was kind of lucky because although I felt as though life had dealt me a bad hand, I was able to turn it around and play something decent out of it on the table.
Life gave you lemons. No, life gave you oranges. You made it into lemonade, right?
Yeah, that's right. I did what Superman can't. I would say that for a lot of listeners, I'm sure it's the same. I'm sure they have had situations or are in situations where it's not the greatest, but it's essentially about what you do sitting in that situation. Because if you're in it, right, you're going to be in it. And if you're going to be in it, you got a couple ways to decide how you want to come out of it. You could come out of it in a slump, right? lower than where you went in, right? You can come out of it on a high, meaning you got in at, you know, mid-level, and, you know, it punched you up a little bit, and you decide, you know what, I'm not going to let this bring me down, and so you stand back up. So by the time you're out on the other end, you're up, you've healed, now you're stronger, right? Your glass jaw's gone, you've become more conditioned to the harsher environment of the world, I guess. So it's really between those two decisions. It's you who decides in that specific place that you're in right now, right? What am I going to take from this?
Yeah.
Am I going to let it batter me? Right? Am I going to let it put me down? Am I going to let it, eat away on my mind whilst I crumble away and have nothing to show for it at the end? Or will I go through this struggle? Will I go through this fight and have something to show for it in the end? Right? We all know what we want. It's just about there and then in that moment of making that decision and that choice. And I think a lot of it comes down to, firstly, talking to Allah. I think you have to ask Allah for this, because if you have depression, it's Allah who brings you happiness. It's not you. You cannot be like, yeah, I'm going to feel happy and force a smile and then be like, yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Because deep down inside, you're still not happy.
Yeah.
It is Allah. He has access and decides how you feel. Whether you have the greatest party going on around you, but you still feel down. That comes to whether He wants to grant that happiness or that sadness or whatever He wants to grant to you. So you got to turn to Him first. And when you turn to Him, you can't just turn to Him, half-heartedly. You can't do it half-assedly. Like, this is not one of those things that, you kind of do for half a day and be like, yeah, that's it. I'm sure it'll work. I'm sure it'll figure itself out. It's not one of those things. It's truly and willingly submitting yourself to Allah. Because once you do that, you're now taking your first steps towards Allah. And what does Allah tell us? If you take steps towards me, I will come running towards you. Right? And I think in this month of Ramadan, that is so important. Right? You have such little things that you can do right now that can be considered as your steps towards Allah, and Allah will come running to you. If you read Surah Ikhlas 3 times, it's as if you read the whole Quran. And each letter that you read is what, 10 rewards on a normal day? In Ramadan, that's multiplied by 70, if I'm right, 7 or 70. And so if you imagine that reading Surah Ikhlas 3 times, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, right, 3 times is amounting to the entirety of the Quran. And I guess we're right to assume that includes the reward that we get from reading the entire Quran. Multiply that by 70, right? You do it 3 times a day, you're reading an entire Quran a day, or you're getting the reward for an entire Quran a day. Yeah. And don't you think, as a human being, right, the more good you rack up on your plate for your akhirah, right, the better your world and your affairs in this current world, your state in this current world are going to be. Like, we are told as Muslims, this world is a prison for the believer and paradise for the non-believer. Like, that is a hadith. We are told that from Prophet ﷺ. So in the few things that we do want to do, like build independence and hold down our own fort on this planet while we're passing through as travelers, right? The best thing that we can do is listen to the advice that we have given to us, because anything that we have been given from the Prophet, right, from his Sahaba, from the Quran, it's to be the best version of ourselves. Yeah. And being the best version of yourself definitely includes being independent. Right? As a grown-up, you have to be independent. Growing up, if you can build that independence, you'll see it, right? If you're a teenager right now listening to this, growing up and you feel as though you're somewhat independent more than others, you see the rewarding side of life a lot quicker. Right? We are made as humans to be independent beings. Yes, we like company. Yes, we should be around people. And yes, we were created to enjoy the company of one another. But more so, we were created independently. Right? We came on this earth, as our greatest grandfather, Adam alayhi salam, on his own, with Hawa alayhi salam, who came from his rib. there wasn't no other external factor. We were independent. We were humans alone. So independence is, I think, one of the greatest
So I can
rewards you can have.
What I can decipher from what you've been saying is give full faith in Allah.
That's correct.
That's what you're saying is, with life, don't get stressed with whatever else is going on and the pressures of the world, etc. Just have full faith in Allah, and then you'll have an answer for everything. Yeah? And that's a very powerful message, and especially coming from yourself, the best message you can have is remember Allah. Have faith in Allah. Never doubt Allah.
Sorry to interrupt. People always like to ask for a roadmap. Like if you go on Google, right? Morning routine of a billionaire. You want to know what they do in the morning.
Reading all the books, you listen to all the podcasts, and doing the whole thing.
That's right. Like how to become a footballer. Like how do I start a Shopify drop shipping store?
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to know the steps, right? Step 1, you do this. Step 2, you do this.
Yeah.
Step 3, you put the jam on the toast. Like you want to know each step.
Exactly that. Yeah.
But I believe when it comes to this, that there is no steps, right? There's just believe. You believe, you have faith, and you stand by it.
Exactly.
Right? You want your du'as to be accepted. You have to believe. As Muslims were told, right? Question. Yeah, it's fine to question the things around us and why we feel certain ways, etc. Right? But more than anything, our requirement is to believe. Mm-hmm. And we just have to believe that Allah, He's there, He's listening, He's watching, He is doing, what He has described Himself as doing, creating, being merciful, watching over us, forgiving. We have to believe.
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest message that someone can take away from this. There's no roadmap to how to become independent.
I think there's a couple of characteristics though you can build on.
That's correct.
So I'm going to very quickly give my characteristics that I believed help someone become mentally independent. So the first 3 characteristics I would say would be to get comfortable, or the first 3 actions. Get comfortable being alone.
That's correct.
That's the first thing. Second thing is make sure that you have, before anything else, allowed yourself to be comfortable getting criticized. That is very important. If someone's criticizing you, they're giving you... Every day you're just being told you're not good enough, or you can't do this and you can't do that, but it's not going to allow you to be mentally independent. Because you're always going to want answers from them, right?
Correct.
So you need to be able to be criticized. And the third and final thing that I think is very important when it comes to becoming independent is to not have to rely on other people. It's as simple as that. Not relying on other people, for example, and this is going to sound very silly, but not relying on a lift, not relying on money, not relying on answers, not relying on just your everyday, day-to-day basic things that you need. I think that allows you to be mentally independent. Because imagine, right, you're at work, you do something wrong, and someone comes in, they just fix it for you, and then you get told off a little bit, but then you can carry on going about with your work, right? That doesn't allow you to be able to have the answer to that problem. So the same thing with life, right? If you're constantly being told how to do things by your parents, or by your spouse, or by your siblings, or by your friends, how is that going to allow you to go out there and do the thing that needs to be done? Correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So you need to be able to not rely on people. Say, for example, right, you're starting up your own business, right? And this is something I'm currently working on. You're starting up your own business, and there's partners, 2 of you guys, right? Now, as a business, it takes 2 of you to put in the work for you to be able to succeed. Now, if one person's doing all the work and the other person's waiting for an answer on how to do things, is that business ever going to come off the ground? No. That person needs to learn how to become independent themselves. And say, for example, right, both of you are putting in work together and you want to grow the business, but one of you does not want to grow the business. How are we going to grow the business if that one person who's 50% of the business isn't going to put in the work? It takes 2 people to tango to grow things. Now, but at the same time, you can take responsibility on yourself saying, I am going to do A, B, C, D. This person just has to do E, F, G, H. At least that A, B, C, D can be accomplished, right? Now, the same thing with your marriage. For example, you, as a guy, you don't know how to cook. I think it's ridiculous if a guy does not know how to cook, because you need to know how to be able to nourish and provide yourself.
He's not talking about me, right? When he said, as a guy, you don't know how to cook. I'm
talking about all men and women.
In general.
Say that. Every person should know how to cook. If you don't know how to cook and your spouse goes away, or something happens and you don't have that spouse no more, what's going to happen to you? You're going to move back into mum and dad's house. You're not independent. Mentally independent means you're not relying on anyone for anything.
And the funny thing with all of that is, right, the word independence was the exact opposite of it. Relying on someone. Yeah, being dependent, relying on someone. And you said, oh yeah, the third characteristic or that you should learn to have is not relying on anyone. Like, as obvious as it is, it's in the word.
Yeah.
Right? So many people who just don't get it.
Yeah.
And, you know...
You could break it down to separate words, but if I did that, we'd be here for at least a good 3 or 4 hours, possibly even a couple of days. Because it's such a massive one.
It's so obvious and it's in front of your eyes sometimes that you you mentally kind of just overlook it.
Like let's break down to a couple of actions, right? So for example, being able to clean. As simple as it is being able to clean, there's so many ways you can mess up cleaning. There's so many ways. You could use the wrong detergent, you could use the wrong acid or bleach or whatever you have to do with cleaning. You can mess up so many times. Being able to clean is a very common thing, right? If you don't know how to clean, you're not keeping your hygiene up, you're not accomplishing half of your faith. The next thing, not being able to cook. If you can't cook, you can't nourish yourself. You're going to be constantly spending money on takeaway, unhealthy. It's not tangible. It's not something you can constantly do. The third thing is potentially being able to exercise and move, being able to do stuff like that. Unfortunately, many people may not be in that position to be able to do some of those things, and they might not be able to become independent. But the majority of us, and I'm speaking for the majority, can do things like, for example, exercising. I think exercising gives a great deal of independence because you're taking out the initiative of working on yourself. Now you can apply that to many different factors in life.
And the thing is, nobody else can do that work for you.
No.
Nobody else. No, that's the one thing I respect about people with a great physique, right? Someone can give you money. You can inherit money, right? You can get Botox for looks, right? You can everything. Someone can give you an award. Someone can give you education. They can essentially stuff that down your throat.
Yeah.
But the one thing they cannot give you, I believe, on this earth, is a good physique.
And that's why it takes hard work.
It takes hard work
and a good diet.
Independence.
And going off of that, it takes us back to cooking. If you know how to cook well, you can match it with your physique, and it just makes you a well-rounded individual. But let's now, I think we've been stuck on this for a bit too long, and I kind of want to ask yourself and your final thoughts about being independent from yourself. Is there any things that you could kind of advise on? A little step-by-step guide sort of thing from yourself and what you'd advise on someone becoming more independent.
Okay.
What would be the first 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that?
Just off the top of my head, off the bat, first couple of things I would say is, number one, make sure you check yourself, right? You learn to analyze yourself, criticize yourself, and once again, critique doesn't have to be bad, can be good too.
Yeah.
Right? Just learn to tell yourself, I'm good at this, I'm bad at this, I need to improve on this, I need to, how do I take this to the next level? And then once you figure that out, look into, which is the second part, look into how you can go about doing that now. So, for example, like, I'm bad at cooking, right? I want to be able to cook so I can look after and feed myself to be more independent, right? How do I do that now? You have
invest in yourself.
Yeah, you have so much around you. You don't have to now go and buy a cookbook. YouTube is free. TikTok is free, right? Facebook is free.
Those TikTok recipes be banging. They are nice.
The Golden Balance, that guy.
The Golden Balance.
That guy.
He does have some good recipes.
Amazing recipes, right? And then you can put
it's the message that you're going to cook for me soon, right? I'm expecting a nice Golden Balance.
I'm waiting for my wife to cook for me. I don't want your food. I want my wife's
No, I want you to cook for me, man.
So and then that will then push on to I would say the third and final point, which is from that you'll be able to then find your own style. And again, using the analogy of cooking really quickly, you find out how to do it, then you find out how you like it, and you do it how you like.
Jazakallah khairan, Amani. So my name has been Ado with Ways of Positivity. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to be back after the break. Jazakallah khairan. Oh, we left it tight.
We always